Hello, race fans, and welcome to NASCAR Video Magazine. In this and every edition, we take you behind the scenes and to the front row of action in a way not available anywhere else. I'm your host, Benny Parsons. And from my living room to your living room, sit back and enjoy this very special volume in our Collector's Series. Now, here's what we have in store. My good friend and three-time Winston Cup champion, Darrell Waltrip, takes time out to share personal memories from his amazing career. We have a very rare interview with one of the true legends of NASCAR racing, the man who started NASCAR's royal dynasty, Lee Petty. There's a visit to the Daytona Racing Archives and a visit with the good old Goodyear guys who mount thousands of tires each race weekend. Now, you've heard the voice. Now meet the man, Eli Gold, our NASCAR insider. And there's more, much more. But let's get to it with our cover story, the greatest races in NASCAR history. It's impossible, of course, to include every great race in NASCAR history, so we focused in on the ones that had something special, ones that helped define the character of our sport, races that aren't just a part of history, but races that made history. One of those races is the 1984 Firecracker 400 in Daytona Beach, Florida. A very special day, a day of unique drama. In attendance, President Ronald Reagan. One of the players, Richard Petty, going for his 200th victory. The other player, NASCAR great Cale Yarborough. Here's how they remember it.
That was a very special day. President of the United States this year, July the 4th, the whole deal. But I was going for my 200th win. And, with all that stuff, that's Hollywood script stuff.
It was a tough race all day. We ran good all day, and, I had Richard right where I wanted him. I thought I was in second place, and I was going to wait to the last lap to try to slingshot him for the win, and I didn't try to pass him up until then because I knew what I had to do.
He drafted by me down the backstretch, went into the corner, went in so hard he went high, and I was able to cut my car down underneath Cale.
Of course, I had to go in flat out, and when I went in flat out, the car drifted up some on me, and I had to chase it up the racetrack a little bit. And it just gave him a little bit of a draft off of me.
I had been in that situation before, so I knew what not to do, to keep from wrecking the cars. So, I just stayed side by side with him, and we come down the straightaway side by side, and we'll go through the dog leg, and I just had a little bit shorter distance to go than he did. That beat him by a couple of 3 feet.
Yeah, I was glad to be a part of it, but I certainly like to have been on the winning end of it.
He was able to pull it off, and never pulled any more of them off, but I guess we used up all our luck in that one race.
Throughout his career, Richard was lucky and good. And while he wasn't a factor in the outcome, his presence was a big part of what I believe, when taken as a whole, is the most dramatic race in the history of stock car racing. It was the King's last race, and funny enough, as he went off in a blaze of glory, it was a driver making his Winston Cup debut who captured the feeling of that day.
Just the atmosphere and the feeling of everybody that was present that day with Richard Petty's last race and my first race, that's what I was thinking. And, it was unbelievable how many people were there and the way that everybody was reacting to Richard's very last race. And I know it sent a chill up my spine when we roared off there for the green flag.
Man, it was so dramatic, so electric. Not only Richard's last ride, but after 29 races and thousands of miles of racing, the championship came down to this one final race of the season. Davey Allison had endured a grueling year and came in leading, needing only a 5th place finish or better to win the title. His quest ended when he was knocked out in an innocent tangle with Ernie Irvan. Kyle Petty and Harry Gant had shots too, but they couldn't pull off the upset. But what would make the race so special was the battle between Bill Elliott, who came into the race 3rd in the points, and Alan Kawicki, the underdog, in 2nd. the drama unfolded as Bill and Alan battled head-to-head for the title, racing back to the line time after time, lap after lap, with the outcome of the entire season resting on each turn around the track. Man, Elliott won the battle and the race, but Alan won the war and the Winston Cup title by beating Bill back to the line just enough times. A matter of inches decided the championship after a year's worth of racing. Man, I was calling a race, but I was having trouble breathing. It was so exciting. Whew. Later, when things calmed down, I visited Alan at home to talk about what that day was like. Atlanta, the final race. Got to be the most exciting race I've ever seen in my life. Did it feel that exciting from where you were sitting in the race car?
Late in the race, it did. I mean, it started off as, you know, we're just going to go run our own race. You know, just try to be smart. Don't let anyone else's performance affect what you're going to do. Just go out and run the best that you can. And we ran really well that day. After watching the tape of that race, I think up until the final pit stop or the final laps of that race, Bill and I ran almost 500 miles, probably never more than 3 seconds apart all day long.
So it was just so close. I wasn't going to be sure until that checkered flag dropped.
I was really excited. It was a dream of a lifetime.
A great race that had it all. Now, when I asked my friend and colleague Ned Jarrett what he thought was the greatest race in history, he had this surprising answer.
I think one of the races that deserves to go down in history as one of the better races in NASCAR Winston Cup racing is the 1991 race at Michigan when Dale Jarrett beat Davey Allison to the line. They raced side by side for about the last 5 laps, and as they came off of turn 4 for the checkered flag, Davey had him by about maybe 2 feet.
Knowing how strong Davey's engine was, I was going to have to really go, and I didn't crowd him out too much, but as we got off of turn 4, Davey had a slight advantage, and our cars touched twice, I think, there. And at that particular time is when I drove my car down the hill, and I think that's what propelled me to win by about 8 inches. So it seemed like it took forever to go around that last lap to me, that things were just happening in slow motion, that I wasn't going as fast as I needed to be going. And as we got closer to the start-finish line, I realized that it was going to really take a surge for me to win my first race.
One of the closest finishes in all of NASCAR Winston Cup racing, and certainly a very exciting one to see 2 second-generation drivers going at it in that manner. Of course, naturally, I was proud that Dale came out the winner of it.
What a finish, and a proud dad. I'm sure that Dale's win at the Daytona 500 in 1993 is right up there, too. Now, when connoisseurs of racing talk about classic battles, one race that always comes up is the 1979 Rebel 500 at Darlington. It takes great racers to make a great race, and this duel had 2 of the best. It was that Richard Petty fellow again and Darrell Walter.
That was probably one of the better races and the cleanest race I've ever seen. I'd like to have a tape of that one because it was really unbelievable. The last several laps, it was unbelievable.
He just wound up being in the lead on the right time. If it had been another lap, I'd have probably been in the lead. It was a super race. You know what I mean? Even though you run second, you teed off at yourself for letting somebody beat you, but you know you was in a race and you know you did as good as you could, and you know you felt real good about it.
I mean, this is back when the track was really treacherous. It was slick, they bear greased it all the time, and you really never raced anybody, you only raced the racetrack. Come down about 10 to go, and Richard hadn't really been all that good all day, but he caught me. And the first thing you know, Richard and Donnie Allison and I were in a real dogfight. And Richard and I were passing back and forth. We passed each other 4 times on the last lap at Darlington. And I mean, we never touched. It's not like we ran into each other, knocked each other out of the way. We literally, he passed me going down the front. I passed him in turn 1, he passed me in turn 2. We passed again going down the back. We passed again up in the middle of 3 and 4. And all the time, Donnie was sitting back here watching all this, knowing that if we screwed up, he had to race one. But anyway, we come down to the white flag, and as I said, we passed each other 4 times. And we go into the 3rd turn, and we're side by side. Richard's on the inside. He's got the preferred line. Donnie is lingering back just far enough so that when we crash, he can get through. We get to the third turn. I run Richard in as far as I can run him, and then I just slam on the brakes. Richard goes in too hard. He goes up the hill. I turn hard left, get in the gas, drive between him and Donnie Allison, pass Richard because he's about to hit the wall, get the lead, win the race. That was probably one of my better driving exhibitions.
A classic battle between two of NASCAR's titans. Can you believe the way they passed back and forth? And at Darlington, folks, it just doesn't get much better than that. Now, of course, some people say my race with Darrell Waltrip at the 1980 World 600 in Charlotte was one of the most exciting races of all time. And folks, it was unbelievable. For 75 laps, we ran back and forth, nose to tail, Darrell leading most of the time. But with about 25 laps to go, I got the lead. I passed Darrell, and my spirits lifted so high, I just might win the World 600. He passed me right back. Oh, man, I've lost again. We did this for about 7 or 8 times in the last 25 laps. We came by and got the signal, 2 laps to go. I'd passed Darrell once on the outside down in 1 and 2. So I started in on the outside again, hoping I'd get alongside of him. He moved up just a tick, and I tried to go under him. And I got alongside down the back straightaway, and we went in turn 3 side by side. But I had the groove, I had position, I took the lead. Came by the start-finish line, took the white flag, 1 more lap. And all I remember looking in the rearview mirror, all I could see basically was the whites of Darrell Waltrip's eyes. He was that close. He tried to get under me as we came off turn 4. He couldn't make it. I came down, and I won the World 600. And I wouldn't say that Darrell lost. He just simply ran out of laps. Now, when it comes to pure excitement, just raw electricity, you've got to talk about the Winston Charlotte Motor Speedway 1992 Under the Lights. That crowd was fired up and ready for some racing.
By being the first big night race and by having that many people there, it was more of a happening. You know, it had more of a circus type atmosphere. And, you know, I think everybody was pretty pumped up for it. All the drivers were, all the fans were. And we run that first segment and we were junk. We finished like 12th or 13th in the first segment and made some changes during the second segment. And we got a little bit better and we were able to win the second segment and come down to the last segment, and it was a 10-lap run, and Earnhardt was at the front, and I was at the front, and Davey was, and, you know, and Ernie, and it pretty much, we felt like it was going to be between us 4. And the way it worked out, they dropped the green flag, and Dale and I got together a little bit in 1 and 2, in between 1 and 2, and he jumped out and squirted out in front of me, and Davey got around me, and I had to run Davey down and get around Davey, and I got to Earnhardt, and, you know, it was 3 laps, 2 laps, and then on the last lap, coming out of 2, his car pushed up a little bit, and I got under him, and we come down the back stretch and run all the way to the infield, and all the way down the grass and dirt and everything else down there. We got to 3, and I'm thinking, we're not going to be able to make it through this corner, and he was on the outside, and I was on the inside, and I made it, and he didn't, and, you know, but we scrubbed off so much speed that Davey got a good run, and I knew I had to try to block him, but, you know, I did all I could do, and he was right there, and we touched 2 or 3 times, and got to the grass, and he ran through the edge of the grass, and we touched a couple more times, and, you know, I think we were both so relieved to get to the start-finish line that we just both let up a little bit, and when we did, we both got together one more time, and Davey wrecked, and, you know, I don't think there's been any race ever where that much excitement happened in that short a period of time. When you look at a 1.5-mile track, you're saying, okay, the last half mile of the race, you had 2 wrecks, everybody was spinning, crashing, so it was pretty exciting.
Give you a heart attack, that kind of racing. Next, we have what you might call the greatest feat in the history of racing. The kind of thing you just look at in awe. Picture this. You're running at Talladega after qualifying on the pole a record speed, 209.398 miles per hour. But a broken oil fitting puts you in the pits. You're standing still as the field is flying by on the green. Before you get back on the track, you're 5 miles behind, nearly 2 laps down. Now, in a short track, getting those laps back is nearly impossible, but imagine you're at Talladega, where it takes a drafting partner just to keep up with the pack. Let alone making up 2 laps under the green, it can't be done, unless you're Bill Elliott, and the year is 1985. Elliott got his lap back from the 26th position, and then, after finally getting a caution, zoomed to a lead he never relinquished on lap 145. I've never seen the like of it and never expect to again. It was unbelievable. What else can you say? The accomplishment speaks for itself. Now, in our research, a producer pointed out an often overlooked race between Rusty Wallace and Ernie Irvin at Bristol. Here's how Rusty remembers it.
It was wonderful. I mean, I led the race off and on all day long, and then I had and right there at the end I had a flat tire, and I got way behind, and I ended up making my lap back up, and I'm in the back of the pack. Okay, the rain came, and I said, now these guys are on old tires, I'm on old tires, but they're going to be scared to pit, but I'm not since I'm in the back. So I pitted, I put 4 tires on, and when I pitted and put 4 tires on and the rain quit, they knew that if they didn't pit, I'd have them. So then they came in and pit. That put me in the front, and me and Ernie had a hell of a dogfight for the last 15 laps there. He hit me going into turn 3. We went sideways, slid across the line. It was just really good, aggressive racing.
Now, here's how Ernie saw the race.
It just come down to that it was like a 50 laps to go, and it was me and Rusty. Rusty had run me down, and I'm trying to win my first race in front of our home crowd. The nighttime race, real hot. And Rusty ran me as hard as you could run somebody for 50 laps. You know, it was like 450 laps led up to this final 50-lap Saturday night shootout.
Hold on a second. Rusty was talking about a day race. Ernie was describing a night race. Now, what's going on? Let's hear the end of this.
You know, Rusty got up under me a few times, but never could quite get up beside me all the way. And you know, we just had a heck of a run at the end. Rusty's a heck of a challenger, and he ran awful good that night, and you know, to come away with a win, you know, with somebody, you know, Rusty's a Winston Cup champion, and you know, to just be able to beat the guys with caliber like that.
Folks, you just learned an important lesson about race car drivers. Give them the chance, and believe me, they'll remember the races they won. Hey, did I tell you about the time I beat Darrell at Charlotte in the World 600? Yeah, I did, didn't I? All right. You've seen races with drama, excitement, incredible finishes, and unbelievable comebacks. But believe me, you haven't seen it all yet. When you talk about the greatest race in NASCAR history, one stands out. Quite simply, the greatest race of all time, the 1976 Daytona 500. Now, the story of that race almost was qualifying. 4 drivers, including A.J. Foyt and Darrell Waltrip, saw their qualifying efforts disallowed after inspection, and a headline-making controversy ensued. By the time the race got underway, NASCAR was hoping what happened on the track would become the focus of events. But little did they know they had nothing to worry about. Now, in those days, there was no flag-to-flag coverage of NASCAR racing, but ABC broadcast the final 22 laps on the wide world of sports. And the entire nation was tuned in, and what they saw catapulted NASCAR into the minds of people across the country. NASCAR would never be quite the same. With 13 laps to go, Richard Petty took the lead from his longtime rival, the Silver Fox, David Pearson. Nose to tail, 2 of the best, both at the top of their game.
You know, Richard and myself always had, we've had a lot of rivalry between each other, and you know, and it's come down to the last lap deal between me and him quite often, and I know that I guess that I had rather outrun him than I had anybody, and I've heard that he said the same thing about me. So, but anyway, that one particular race, he really had me beat if we hadn't a wreck.
At that point in time, we had radio communication, you know what I mean? And Richard had told us that says, I'm racing him, but he's just playing with me. And I think David was telling his people the same thing, but I think we'd got by him coming down to get the white flag. And Richard said, I'm in front of him. I don't know where I'm going to be able to stay or not.
I led him across to the white flag, and we go up the back stretch, and he gets a good running start and passes going in the 3rd corner. Well, when he goes in, he goes up a little bit, and I pull back down the side of him. So we beat and bash all through the corner, and then coming off of the 4th corner, I thought I had him cleared. I did, all except about that much. So I'm gonna move out in front of him there, you know, to keep him from coming on back. Well, he moves just as far as he can, and he has to turn in because the wall's out there. So he just does catch me on the left rear, on the right rear. And when it does, it gets me sideways, throws him into the fence. And then he spins down through there, and I'd get it like it, and then I'd get it straight. And I said, man, this is all right. About that time, that daggum thing wasn't on the ground. It was going straight, but it took off and spun backwards spun the wrong way, spun up the track, hit the track with the nose, and spun all except probably 20 yards to the racetrack. When it started spinning, I said, I'm all right. It's going to make it to the checker flag anyway. And the dadgum thing stopped, and I couldn't get it started. And David, he comes down, he spins, starts down pit road or starts toward the infield pit wall, and Joe Frazon comes by and hits him on the left front and straightens him up. Otherwise, he'd run head on in the wall. Straightens him up, he comes across the deal and gets the checker flag, and I'm sitting out there trying to get cranked up. You run third.
I know
right?
it.
Use a lap
second.
Yeah.
No, I finished third because
okay, but they took a lap away from us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I still finished in front of Benny. But anyhow, that was a spectacular situation.
The fan was in the radiator, and it wouldn't let it turn.
That's why it wouldn't start.
That's the reason it wouldn't
anyhow,
start.
I couldn't get that thing
And they
started.
penalized us a lap for pushing the car.
We were all out running through the grass trying to push the car, and we ended up pushing the car, getting it started, and he ran across the start-finish line, and they ended up penalizing us a lap, so he finished second anyhow, one lap down because he beat the other guy across the line. But, it was just one of those deals where at that point in time, it was a big race, the Daytona 500, everybody wanted to win it. And what amazed me more about that race than anything else was when he got out of the car, he wasn't mad. I mean, I would have been slinging stuff and throwing stuff and screaming at everybody, but, he got out of the car and said, hey, we'll go next week. And he was tickled to death to come out of here with a second-place finish, I think.
I guess that was probably about the most exciting race that I've ever run, and of course, I'd say the most exciting one that everyone in the grandstands had ever seen.
Well, I think it had a major effect on the sport because it did draw attention in areas that the sport had never gotten attention before. It's interesting how some newspapers and even electronic media have sort of stayed away from the sport until you have the real tragedies or the situations of that type where there's a lot of drama involved, and so it got front page headlines everywhere, and the networks were talking about it and showing the highlights of it. So yeah, that had to help the sport.
And I finished third in the 1976 Daytona 500. If Pearson had just stalled and not moved, I would have won my second Daytona 500 in a row. Well, how can you sum it all up? Really, you can't. We'll look at the 1984 Firecracker, Richard and Cale, historic. The 1992 Hooters 500, dramatic. The 1991 Michigan Champion Spark Plug 400, exciting. The 1979 Rebel 500 at Darlington, a classic. The Winston 1992, electric. Talladega 1985, unbelievable. Bristol, pick 'em. And the 1976 Daytona 500, Petty and Pearson, the greatest stock car race of all time. Man, I never get tired of hearing about and talking about those great races. Now, in our tech report, I visited with a unique team of NASCAR pros, the guys who keep things rolling. You'll see what I mean. Each weekend there's a Winston Cup race. The Goodyear people will mount about 2,000 tires. That's for Sunday's race and the support race on Saturday. You look at all this mass of wheels and you try to figure out, well, how do they figure out who gets a set of tires first? Here's how it works. The current Winston Cup champion, in this case, Alan Kawicki, his tires will be mounted first. Then the second place point standings. Bill Elliott, this was from 1992. Davey Allison, Harry Gant, Kyle Petty, Mark Martin, on down the line. These fellows will be mounted 4 tires. They'll go through the entire field. Each team will get 4 tires. Then they'll start back over, and Alan Kawicki will get a second set of tires. And before the weekend's over, they'll mount about 2,000 tires. Here's what happens. They take the wheels, they put them in this little cart, they cart the wheels inside, then they go over and stuff a liner inside a tire and get a set of tires. I'll show you how to do this. Come on. Okay, we've left the stack of wheels. Now we're going to come over to the Goodyear trailer full of racing tires and inner liners. This is a inner liner, a shield, basically what it is, a tire inside a tire. Now last year, there was a third piece. There was a tube that went inside this liner. This year, Goodyear has developed a tubeless inner liner, right? This is Jerry's step. The fellow who balances tires also is going to stuff this liner in the racing tire and show you how he goes. Go ahead, Jerry.
Okay.
He sticks it in 90 degrees to the tire, then comes on the other side, takes his feet, turns it around. See, hey, Jerry, everybody's always complaining about how hard that is. That didn't look hard.
After about 50, it kind of gets that way.
And how many years have you been doing this?
23.
Oh, after 23 years, it's a little easy. I'm afraid I would not be able to do this. The reason the liner's inside the tire, it's a safety factor. In case they lose air in the tire, the thing would go down and use the inside tire for support. Now we've stuffed the liner in the tire. Let's take it inside and show you what happens next. The wheels, the tires are brought inside. Now a tire changer picks up a tire and mounts it. Let's watch this procedure. Take it over to the tire changer. First of all, we put a little bit of a soap. A little bit of soap on the inner tire and the outer tire. This is so the tire will come up and seal against the wheel. All right, the tire is mounted. Now we got to put air in the tire. Watch this. First of all, we will fill up the inside tire. This is the stem for the inner tire. We're going to put a valve stem in the outer tire. Meanwhile, we're still putting air in the inside tire. He measures the air pressure inside the tire, puts a stem in. Okay, how many pounds do we want in the inside tire, Wayne?
55.
55 pounds in the inside tire. Now, how many pounds of air will we need in the outside tire?
35.
35. Okay. Sometimes they talk about a tire being equalized. What they're saying is that the air pressure in and the inner tire and the outer tire are the same. And that means that the inside tire is floating around in there and it will cause a vibration. Once the tire is mounted, it's rolled over to be balanced. Okay, the tire mounter has passed the tire off to the balancer. Okay, we're going to throw it on the balancing machine. This simulates the tire being on the car. They tighten it up. They spin the tire. It only turns a few revolutions per minute. When it gets to that point, the tire stops, and we can see it takes 3/4 of an ounce of weight on the inside and 1 1/4 ounces on the outside at a certain position. Now he will stop the tire, find the position that it needs the weight. He will add 1 1/4 ounces on the outside of the tire. He will then add 3/4 of an ounce on the inside of the tire, spin the tire one more time. The tire gets to a certain speed, it stops, and you can see all zeros across the top. That means the tire is in balance. And this machine is exactly like one you would balance a tire on at home. He rolls it off, rolls it outside, it's stacked and ready for the team to come get it. Okay, we followed the wheels, we followed the tires. They've been mounted by this Goodyear crew. And this crew is basically just like a team of Winston Cup competitors. There's about 20 of them. They all work together to ensure that the competitors have a tire that's sealed against the wheel, that the tire is in balance, because once the teams get these tires, it's critical to the performance of the car. How many times have we heard a driver or a team say, we had a bad set of tires? These fellows work as hard as they can to ensure that the teams get a great set of tires. In all my years of racing, I always knew I could count on those guys to put good wheels underneath me. Now, while drivers are making history on the track, John Malk, along with his father Bob, have been keeping track of it all in the Daytona Racing Archives, which serves exclusively as a resource for the media and a storehouse for racing history.
We keep all of the records of racing in Daytona Beach since 1902 on up to present. Films, videos, still photography, all the record books, the rule books, the yearbooks, press guides, programs, some trophies, odds and ends, all kinds of things, you name it. It all started in 1902 at what was the Orman Hotel. Two great men in the automotive business, Alexander Winton and Ransom E. Olds, over breakfast had a friendly wager as to whose car was faster. So they took both cars down to the beach and they ran them, and they called it a draw at 57 miles an hour, and they decided they'd each go home and build new, faster cars for the next year. And they came back down, and Alexander Winton beat Ransom Olds. Olds was driving his Pirate, and Alexander Winton was driving the Bullet. And he set the first record on the beach of 68 miles an hour in 1903. And it goes on and on. Each year, people kept coming down, trying to break everybody's record. And it was an international thing. And in 1935, Sir Malcolm Campbell did 330 miles an hour here in his Bluebird, which is the most famous car ever driven on the beach, powered by two 12-cylinder Rolls-Royce engines. And then we go to the NASCAR thing. There were so many things located in different areas within the Speedway Corporation. And we thought that they should be brought together and housed in one location so that it would be easier for researchers and people who wanted information to retrieve that information. And in 1988, August of '88, we started the Archives Department. This is very important. The history of racing in this area, the history of racing, period, in the United States. It's extremely important. And what gives me satisfaction overall is the fact that this stuff will be preserved because I'm here doing this for future generations to see. Hey, instead of talking about this stuff, let's show you around a little bit. Come on. This is the library. We house all the programs, automotive books. Let me show you something here. This is the first 500 program from Daytona. It's considered to be the rarest one. However, there is another one. The 65 program, because it rained that day and everybody used these to keep their heads dry. So trying to find one of these in good shape is a little bit rough. But we've got all the programs here. We've got automotive books. We've got the record books, the yearbooks, the rule books, magazines, everything. Anything you can think of. Throw a question at me. These are the negatives. There are thousands and thousands of negatives here. Each one of these envelopes holds a negative. They're dated, there's a description on them, and they're going to be entered in the computer soon. We're here strictly as a media resource, and we're not open to the public. But this is NASCAR's best documentation of their history. Everything is here from 49 on up to present. We've got slides, and we've got the negative collection. And we've got earlier stuff than that. These are all our videos, our 3/4 inch video of all the races, most of the races. And over here, these are all proof books. And proof books are contact sheets made from negatives of the more recent races from the 70s and 80s and 90s. And down here, more negatives. A lot more negatives. More negatives up here from the 60s. All these books are full of negatives. In the 60s, they looked like this. 2/4 inch, 2 1/4. And then the proof books. We'll pull a proof book down here from the 60s and just to give you an idea what these look like. And there's the King in 66 with his Plymouth. This is a kind of a special section of the archives. This is dedicated to Bill France Sr. And this is Bill with Lee Iacocca back when he was with Ford Motor Company in 1965. This is Bill with President Nixon. A letter from Jimmy Carter. Bill France Sr. with Rosalind Carter. Bill France Jr. with George Bush. Bill France Sr. with President Reagan. And a portrait of the France family with President Reagan. Okay, you think you've got collectibles? Here we are in our storage room. Let me show you this. These are the timing clocks that NASCAR used to use in the 50s and 60s to time the cars as they made their qualifying runs. And these are timing lights that were actually used on the beach. These were used during the qualifying runs. These flags are kind of unique. Each one of these flags are signed by the Daytona winners in their given events each year that's identified on the flags. We've got a lot of years here and a lot of good autographs. But this flag's important. This one's pretty special. This was done at the White House in 1971. All the drivers that were there, the great names in racing: Graham Hill, the late Mark Donohue, Dan Gurney, Richard Petty, Roger Penske, Jackie Stewart, Bobby Unser, Johnny Rutherford, Kenny Roberts, Don Garlitz, and A.J. Foyt. You saw where we kept our negatives. All these file cabinets are full of the prints. Let me just show you something. It goes with that last flag. NASCAR goes to the White House. Richard Petty's 71 Plymouth Roadrunner on the White House lawn. President Nixon looked at it. Hope you enjoyed your visit at the Daytona Racing Archives. And next time, bring Benny with you. We got a lot of pictures of him, too.
Thanks, John. I'm going to take you up on that sometime. A man who has made more than his share of NASCAR history is my good friend, Darrell Waltrip, our driver profile. It's raining at the racetrack, so we've invaded the Waltrip bus. I'm holding Sarah, Jessica, Stevie back coloring. Thought we'd talk to Darrell Waltrip about his career in racing and where he's going from here. Darrell, is it still fun?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. You look very...
yeah, I do, don't I?
You look very good there, Ben. It's pretty,
No.
pretty becoming to you. and you're not too old, I promise you. Yeah, I love racing, and I think I've told you this before, but when I got hurt there in '90 and I was away for a few weeks, it really came really clear to me that just how much I loved racing and how much it means to me, how much it means to my family. Stevie and I were very miserable during that period of time when I had to sit at home and watch the races on the couch and watch somebody else drive my car. And I think the most disappointed I ever was in Daytona, the 4th of July, the weekend I got hurt. I was unconscious for some time. I woke up, I'd just come out of the operating room. I woke up and the race was coming on TV. And I started to cry. I said, I cannot believe they're having this race and I'm not there. They're gonna have it without me, whether I'm there or not. And I was so devastated. That my car was getting ready to start a race that I wasn't gonna be in it. And that never happened to me before. I mean, I'd always, I was on a real long streak of like 500 starts or something. And so it really was emotional for me to be out of the sport there for a little while. But it also was very good for me because it made me come back really with a little bit of a vengeance. People have a tendency to write you off, say you're too old and you don't want to do that anymore. But I tell you, I still have as much fun, I still get as excited, and I still want to win as badly as I ever did.
So you think that race car drivers are born with natural ability to drive a race car?
Good ones are.
Really?
Oh, I think so. What I like is I can go out in a car, and other drivers can too. Don't misunderstand me. Great drivers, good drivers can go out in a car, and the car can be junk, but you don't ever know it. They go around the racetrack, they compete, they do a pretty darn good job, and the car may not been, any other driver would have wrecked the car or parked the car, one or the other. There's just something about, I think, a really good driver, he makes it look so easy. He goes around the racetrack and the car just looks like it's floating around the racetrack. And that's natural ability. That's being able to put that car right to the edge, but not over the edge. And that's something that a lot of drivers can't distinguish, is where is the edge? And all of a sudden they're over it and they're in trouble. But the great ones, they're always on the edge, but they're never over the edge. But I won the first race in Nashville in 1975, driving my own car.
That was still your car?
Yeah, that was a terminal transport car, and Jake Elder was the crew chief on the car. We won again in 75 at Richmond, Virginia. The car was still the terminal transport car. It was still my car, but we had made the deal with Dyegard in July. That race was in September, and even though it was my car, it was their engine, and it was still kind of my deal. I'd already signed up to drive for them, and so they got credit for the win. But we actually won 2 races in 75 with our own stuff. But the first race we run was Daytona, and I think we won the qualifying race in 76. Then in that year, I only won 1 race that whole year, and that was Martinsville. Then in 77, I was very upset in 76 because when we did run, we ran well, but the car would always break. So I went on a mission to find me an engine man, and I found Robert Yates. Well, I didn't find him. I'd known Robert from, you know, stuff I'd done up at Juniors, buying used parts and whatnot. Got just hot and heavy after Yates, and got Bill Gardner hot and heavy after him, and we hired Yates, and he came to Florida, and we worked the first part of 77 down in Florida, building all of our engines and traveling out of Florida. Then about the middle of the season there, we found a shop that up by the Charlotte airport, and Dyegard bought that, and we moved the whole operation up to Charlotte, all during the 77 season, which we won 6 races in 77.
So you felt like in 1977 you've arrived?
I came into my own. I felt, you know, I learned a lot about, in 77, I learned that you don't have to have the fastest car to win the race, that you can win the race by being smart, by being in the right place at the right time, and that you didn't always have to have the best car to win the race. That's probably the biggest thing I learned that year.
So when did you go with Junior? What year did you? 81, was that 81? 81.
That was incredible. I mean, we
so
started
you and
off.
Junior just hit it off.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, it's of course there's an arrogance that I had at that time, but I remember going up to Juniors, and Tim Brewer was there, and Harold, and a bunch of them were there, and we were looking at the cars, and they had won 14 poles and 6 races in 1980. That's what they had done. And I remember walking around looking at the cars and said, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, boys, y'all do it all wrong as far as I can tell." I said, "I'm going to win 14 races, and we might win 6 poles." And just being, you know, arrogant, cocky, whatever you want to call it. And everybody kind of got a big laugh out of that. But we won 12 races and 14 poles or whatever it was.
Was 1985 championship the most satisfaction you ever had winning a championship?
The thing about 85 was it was one of those Ford Chevrolet deals where Ford had an advantage, and we just kept working and working and working and testing and testing, and Chevrolet was doing all they could do, and Junior was doing all he could do, and really Charlotte was a turning point. I'm sure you remember, but we won the Winston on Saturday and the 600 on Sunday, and that turned our year around right there because we hadn't done all that well up to that point. But Bill, you know, Bill Elliott was plastered everywhere, and rightfully so. I mean, the man won 12, what did he win, 12 races that year?
11 or 12 races, yeah.
Phenomenal. And to this day, as long as I've been in racing, the 2 laps he made up under green is still the most amazing thing I've ever seen in one of our races at Talladega. But we just kept plugging away, and even though he won 11 or 12, we were second every time, and we were just kind of hanging there waiting for something to happen, and lo and behold, you know, they won the $1 million at Darlington, and it seemed like they quit. They didn't have enough staying power. They didn't have the punch to knock us out, and we were able to hang in there and win the championship. And that was pretty exciting because we did that against incredible odds. Finally, it just came to the middle of 86 or so there that Rick Hendrick came along and started talking to me and talking some pretty big numbers for me to go drive for him. Finally, I went to Junior. I said, Junior, I don't know what we're going to do, but I've been offered this deal, and I want to stay here, but this is what this man's willing to pay me. And Junior said, well, if I was you, I'd take that job.
You and Hendrick never had the success that obviously you envisioned going in.
No, you know, everybody called it the dream team, and it seemed like it had the potential to be the dream team. Waddell and I got together, and Waddell was the master of horsepower. I was good reputation for chassis and being aggressive on the racetrack, but the combination never worked. 88, we moved the deal out, moved it into my shop, and Jeff and I took the deal over. In 88, I had a pretty decent year. In 89, I had a great year. 89 was, you know, won Daytona, won Charlotte, won Atlanta.
Won the Daytona 500.
Won the Daytona 500.
Why'd you decide to buy your team, and now you're going to spend all this money? And
man, we could talk forever about that whole situation, buying the team and why, and it's an incredible chain of events leading up to doing the deal, and then while the deal was going down. But I had driven what I thought was for the best. I knew I want to be in this business for not just as a driver. I want to be around as a car owner and enjoy the sport. So I want to have a team of my own. I want to stay in the sport. Racing has given me everything I have. It's all I want to do. It's not all I can do, but it's all I want to do. My career has been able to capture the very best part of this sport, from the greats to what will be the future greats. And I've been able to be right in there with them all the way along. I've been able to beat Richard Petty racing on the track, and now I'm going to be in Bobby, and now I'm racing Davey and Kyle, and being able to beat them and compete against them. So what I want to be remembered for, first, I want to be remembered for being honest, sincere, and competitive.
Darrell's place is secured in NASCAR Winston Cup history, that's for sure. Next, Dr. Jerry Punch talks to a man who's witnessed his fair share of NASCAR history, the voice of MRN Radio, plus a whole lot more, a man on the go, Eli Gold.
We are at the headquarters of MRN, the Motor Racing Network in Daytona Beach, Florida, where we are about to visit with Eli Gold, who's probably one of the more famous radio announcers in the nation. Not only does he do radio for auto racing, but he does college football and other things, which we're going to find out in just a moment. Eli, MRN has been around for a lot of years, but how long has Eli Gold been involved?
I've been with the network 17 years, almost 18. I joined the network in May of 18 years ago, so May of '93 will be the start of the 18th year. And as you well know the story, I mean, that was the first race I ever attended, really. The World 600 of 1976 was the first race I was on the air for. It was, in those days, an on-the-air audition, which really is unheard of here in 1993.
Eli, you're trying to convince us that you had never been to a race before you worked your first radio broadcast?
I really hadn't. Well, let me rephrase that in saying I had visited the Martinsville Speedway for one of their old doubleheaders. Steve Wade, who I had happened to know through my hockey days, said, why don't you come out to the racetrack? And that was a doubleheader. There was a modified race and what used to be called the Late Model Sportsman Series. At the first Winston Cup race I ever attended was the one I was on the air for, May of 1976 at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, in the days when MRN still broadcast at Charlotte. And having grown up in Brooklyn, New York, I just learned to like the sport by watching those few laps that they used to show you on Wide World of Sports on a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon, sandwiched in between wrist wrestling from Petaluma and the Duke Kahanamoku Surfing Classic in Hawaii. They'd take it to Darlington for 18 laps or 10 laps from Daytona or something. But there was just something about the sport, the color, the speed, the excitement, what have you, that intrigued me. And as my career allowed me to move south to pursue other sports, I talked to MRN and basically that's how I got my foot in the door, by pestering my way in.
Eli, how did a nice Jewish boy like you from Brooklyn get so well entrenched in a sport that had its roots in the South?
It's interesting. Again, the basic interest was there. I used to enjoy watching motorsports. I had had an occasion over the years to visit Freeport when they used to have a racetrack. I used to watch Chris Economaki and Keith Jackson do the old figure eights from Islip Speedway out on Long Island. I just kind of liked it. You know, why does anybody like something? I just found motorsports intriguing growing up. And when I had the opportunity to move south to pursue my hockey broadcasting career, I applied to MRN and said, listen, I think I can do play-by-play of your sport, not knowing whether I could or I couldn't, not knowing a harmonic balancer, if it would fall off a car and end up at my feet. I knew nothing about the technical of the business, just that I wanted to follow the sport. And they said, well, had you ever done any racing work before? And I said, certainly I had. Of course, certainly I hadn't. But I waited a few days and I called back. Jack Arute was the general manager of MRN at that time, now of course working for ABC. And I called Jack and I said, listen, I can't find my racing tapes. I said, they're somewhere. I can't, of course they didn't exist. But I said, I couldn't find them. Would you take a hockey tape? And I guess the thinking was, if you could do a hockey broadcast and keep up with the speed of the National Hockey League, you could probably keep up with the speed of a Winston Cup race. So I sent Jack a tape of, I believe it was a St. Louis Blues Boston Bruins game. I was doing the Blues games at the time on television, and I said, here's a tape, and he listened to it and said, okay, come on to Charlotte in May. We'll put you on the air. If things work out, we'll keep you. If they don't work out, you're gone. So that May, I walked into the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Barney Hall and I were working the turns. Of course, we're now in the booth together.
Not good news for Davey
Then we had
House.
Ken
Fans, the
Squire
car made
and
one
Jack
lap around the
Arute
racetrack.
in the anchor booth at the time. The pit reporters were Charlie Harville, the broadcaster from the Carolinas, and Bob Myers, who of course is predominantly known as a writer for Circle Track and other fine magazines. That was the broadcast crew that day. And I really don't remember all that much of what I said, but apparently I didn't embarrass myself too badly, because here we are almost 18 years later.
Eli, you do motorsports. Let's see, you said you do football and basketball for the Crimson Tide of Alabama. How do you juggle the schedule?
Well, it's a logistical nightmare, but it is a nightmare that you overcome by the use of private planes and by the use of budgeting your time as judiciously as you can. Usually what happens is, on a conventional week during football season, when I'm in Birmingham on Monday, I'll go to practice. Monday nights in Birmingham, I'll host the Gene Stallings talk show. Then Tuesday I come to Daytona, but I'll bring with me on the airplane statistics to prepare for the football game of that coming weekend. So while I'm flying back and forth, I'm filling out my spotter's chart or going over stats, whatever it might be. Wednesday I'm back in Birmingham, and again I'll drive to Tuscaloosa and catch the football team's practice. Then Thursday I go to the racetrack for the Thursday night radio show. I stay there Friday. I will work at the racetrack Thursday and Friday, getting interviews and all the preparation I can do for the weekend MRN broadcast. Then late Friday afternoon or early evening, or sometimes late Friday night, depending on what the schedule is, I'll hop on an airplane, fly to wherever Alabama is playing, get there sometime Friday night, do the ball game on Saturday, be it morning, afternoon, or evening, and then right after the game, head back to the airport, fly back to where the race is, do the race, and then return home Sunday evening.
I'm sure people must kid you a little bit, but do you have time for hobbies? I mean, what would your hobbies be? Aerobics, fitness, ballet?
You know, for me, a break is just staying home. I mean, I stay home. We've been building a home in Birmingham, so we've been, overseeing to some degree the building of the house. Spend time with the baby, which, you don't get enough time to do in real life, it seems. But really, to me, just staying at home with the family, whether it's just sitting in the house and talking or, driving around town. It's nothing overly glamorous. But when you spend 250 some odd days a year on the road, whatever it comes out to, my hobby is staying in Birmingham and staying at the house.
Everyone likes to think that they have left their mark or made their mark in their chosen profession. How would Eli Gold like to be remembered?
I guess as a guy who made people smile, made them laugh every now and then, but still managed to get the story of the race, of the game, of the event across to the listeners. You know, I love radio. It's a wonderful medium. It's in many regards a very romantic medium, and it really deserves a lot of hard work. And if you can get the story across, but at the same time make people chuckle just a bit or have a good time with it, let the personality come through, it makes for a pleasant listening experience. And hopefully I can be remembered as one who told the story, but also had folks enjoy themselves and chuckle and laugh a little bit and really kick back and enjoy.
Thanks, Jerry. One of the greatest racers in the history of our sport is, without a doubt, Lee Petty. Now, he doesn't blow his own horn much about being in 6th place on the all-time win list. And in fact, he doesn't talk much to us media types at all, just about never. So when we caught up to him one afternoon, he covered a lot of ground. So we just kind of sit back and listen closely. Like about how much things have changed over the years, but he wouldn't change places for anything. Now, Lee talked about in his racing days, when they call this sport stock car racing, they meant stock car racing.
Oh, well, we had to win. We go to the racetrack and we was looking to have enough food, enough gas to get to the racetrack. That's the truth. In other words, we even carried our sandwich with it. We even, when we left home, we drove the race car to the racetrack. I drove a race car all the way from here to California and raced. I drove it all the way to New York, raced, Canada, everywhere, and drove the race car. We didn't have no luxury at all. Especially in 1949 and 50, didn't nobody. I could go down to the Chrysler place and buy a Plymouth for $900. And I could take that car and win races with it. Of course, didn't pay but $1,000, but I didn't have nothing invested. See what I mean? Now they got $1 million invested in these cars, and the most they can win is about $75,000. Now, which is the best percentage? I was in it at the right time.
Lee remembered what it was like seeing the Daytona International Speedway for the very first time.
It scared the hell out of me, I'll put it that way. And it didn't only scare me, it scared everybody that come down in through that tunnel. Because we'd been running half a mile, quarter miles, and maybe a mile track now and then. And we look up there and see this monster, you know what I mean? And God, people's eyes popped out of their head. And so I said, well, to myself, I said, those fellas ain't got no more experience to run this dang race car than I have. And so I said, I'll just get in there and run wide open. That's what I did and won the race. It's just like going to your first movie. You don't know what's going to happen, you know what I mean? And so, therefore, nobody had any knowledge of it. You know, nobody had been down here in practice or nothing, see? And they didn't have all these garages here. So I pulled a race car out here. There's a big old ditch out here, a drain ditch. Put the front wheels up on the top part and the back wheel on the back part. And so we wouldn't have to jack the car up because it was in the sand out there.
Lee won the very first Daytona 500 in a photo finish over Johnny Beauchamp. It took NASCAR a day or two to declare Lee the official winner. Now, Lee was also involved in one of the most horrifying crashes ever at Daytona. But amazingly, as scary as this crash is, and it essentially ended his career, it doesn't haunt him at all.
Johnny Beauchamp, he and I were running on the last lap. And going out of the third turn, up fourth turn there, he went high and I went low. I went across the finish line and somebody said, well, how'd you know you won the race? I said, I looked out the window and I had to look back when I went across the finish line. 1961, we was running a heat race, a 125-mile heat race, and going down the back chute, I was running, I think, third or fourth, and this fella, he couldn't see real good, and Banjo spun out in front of me, and I sort of missed him. When I missed him, this fella hit me from the bumper and carried me over the fence, and I stayed in the hospital 2 or 3 months. You don't remember anything when you're in the air like that. You don't. I didn't, and I've asked a lot of other fellas, do they remember anything? And they don't remember. You know what I mean? Like a fella has a wreck, you run up to him, you ask him what happened. Hell, he can't tell you because he blanked out. I mean, his mind did. I mean, he's seen it. And so I think the good Lord bestowed in our brain so much so we wouldn't remember those bad things, so we wouldn't have nightmares.
And finally, after all these years, Lee has developed a philosophy on his life, career, and how he should be remembered.
Well, I always figured that when a day is a man born, his days are numbered, and when he lives that lifetime and when he dies, it's all back to dust. And no use to remember. Why remember a dead person? Because there's too many people living in this world. Them are the people you got to put your mind to.
Well, thanks for joining me once again on NASCAR Video Magazine, the Collector Series. It's my pleasure to be able to bring it to you, but I expect you to let me know what you think. So I'm counting on you to write me at the address on the screen. Thanks again, and see you on the next edition.